your flesh and blood.
Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, new paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week, Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, and be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. And welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Reverend Dr. D. Richard Dugan, and as always, it is a pleasure coming your way. Yes, it is. I'm telling you, I enjoy doing these programs, and I'm glad that you are here to share in the bounty that is going to be bestowed upon us. Kind of reminds me of the dinner prayer growing up Catholic. Bless us, O Lord, and these thy gifts, which we are about to receive from thy bounty. Well, we're going to have quite a bounty here because we're going to talk with a very special guest who is basically all the way north of where we are. Won't tell you where because it's not really important. But what we're looking at is the process of something that kind of popped up back, I think, in the 70s. Might have been the early 80s. Something called biofeedback. But we're going to go beyond that. You've heard the programs that I have done years and years ago. I hope you've heard them. In particular with Stephen Lewis, who wrote the book Sanctuary and had a program called EMC Squared. You've also probably heard me mention on a number of occasions about the Rife Frequency Generator and that I narrated their DVD. That was really very cool. Back in, I want to say 2004, maybe 2005. And I still have that, and I listen to it every once in a while. It's kind of neat to hear that young guy speaking about what Royal Raymond Rife came up with. And there are others who are doing the same kind of thing. Well, our very special guest, Karen Ann McDonald, is with us to talk about the types of applications. This is what is so amazing, folks, is that you don't need to buy a super expensive piece of equipment, put it in the corner of your room and go over to it every once in a while. It's an application on your phone. You've seen some of the commercials for heart monitors that can tell you a minimum of things about your heart, blood sugar, measuring that, blood pressure, et cetera, et cetera. And then it gives you the information right there on your phone, which is really, I think it's a lifesaver. Well, we'll find out how much of a lifesaver it is, and I don't know whether it's a strawberry or cherry lifesaver, but we'll find out what flavor it is. Karen Ann McDonald, thank you so much for joining us and sharing with us these insights into this new, I'm going to say it's new technology, because if it's in the last 10 or 15 years, it's new to most all of us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for your kind invitation. I really appreciate it, Richard. So yes, I have been doing medicine for about 42 years. I started off as a neonatal intensive care nurse. And so we were at the Royal University Hospital, which is by the University of Saskatchewan. And I was totally intrigued, but I was so disheartened from what I was seeing in in the field, it was ridiculous. I was ready to quit nursing, like right while I was training. I went, this is how we're supposed to be like looking after people. It didn't make sense to me. People were getting worse. And then when I got into being the union rep, I saw all the intricacies of, the dynamics of what it was. And it became a medical mafia, really. And so from there, I went into doing herbs and oils and iridology and live blood cell and colon hydrotherapy and steam hydrotherapy and reflexology, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic, anything I could get my hands on, Reiki master, matrix energetics, anything that I could see was actually helping or going back, somewhere before Tartarian and somewhere before the flood. I figure they had it right. So, I was
I
like,
like that you go all the way back there to the flood and Noah's Ark. I want to ask you though, before you
yeah,
continue there, how about the Chinese medicine? It's been around for over 5,000 years. They had no FDA. They
sure.
just knew that it worked, right?
Well, they more than knew that it worked. They were so far advanced, and so is like Russian Vedic. So a lot of the Russian Vedic medicine is where traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic came off of, right? So as we think Tartarian medicine, and like obviously it's pre-flood, but I mean going back to the creator, I mean, how is this planet, set up? It was set up on light, sound, and that type of thing. We can all go into that and really when you go into biofeedback, it's an extrapolation of what our voice is. We are the creation. That's the breath of life. It's the inspiration. It's the expiration.
Mm-hmm.
And everything is held within there. So whatever language we speak, those tones hold a certain frequency or dynamics. And that is actually part of our soul frequency. It's part of, who we are, whole linguistics. I mean, right now everyone's speaking, pretty well English, but that was none of our original light languages. So you need to go back to the mother's tongue. So that's part of this when you get into it. But, like you said, it wasn't just 5,000 years ago. They had much more advanced technology. And we're finding right now as people are learning about Tartarian and mud flood cities and star forts, how much they've actually hidden and kept away and secreted, vaults and secreted bases and secreted mountains that they've kept a lot of this technology for it that is now coming forth. So Tesla's technology is not new. Royal Raymond Rice technology is not new. And I'm sitting here about 5-6 hours north of Spokane, Washington, in the Great White North. People think it's British Columbia in the Sinai Kootenai Mountains here. And so what happens, we actually have a Tesla generator that's still running 127 years later, that's powering up a silver mine and a little town. Now, what does that tell us? There's still light bulbs and stuff with hemp running out here.
Wow.
I mean, it's mind blowing. You think, everyone thinks about, when you get into the generators and what was going, they think of Niagara Falls, but we have the second one here. And so, I've just been, able to see some of this incredible stuff. So, and, been able to be with tribes that have held copper plates that have the original treaties with the monarchy on them that are just 2,500 years old. So we don't really care about a lot of this paper stuff. But into the biofeedback, that became a whole exciting thing. I had gone to a health expo and I was already disenchanted by, looking at the hospital medical mafia and pharmaceutical, pharmaceutical, everything. It's fungicide, it's herbicide, it's tribalcide, it's genocide. And the reason why is because it's always laced with other hidden technology. And now we know it to be nanotechnology, that whether it's in injections, sprays, food, water, aerosol, things over our head and air pollution, we're getting hit on every different degree. So I go in here and I'm all excited because I'm going to these things just to see what the crystals, it's new herbs, it's new technology, it's new minerals, whatever you've got, I want to see it. And there was this biofeedback machine, and I thought, oh, it looks kind of like, an ECT machine, like where we shock clients at the psych unit. And I'm like, well, let's just see. But because I was a neonatal nurse, I worked with technology. I worked with radiology. I worked with magnetics. They're called EEGs and EKGs that I used on every client. We were monitoring telemetry with arterial blood gases, and everything else was very high tech in an ICU, right? It's also one of the few places where we gave minerals and vitamins because we cared about the children, right? No other place was looking at that. So I go in there and I'm like, wow, I could see energies, auras, and it was just digitally computerized. So I was kind of interfaced with that. And then comes along Ryan Williams. And Ryan Williams helped set up one of the first biofeedback schools ever in Canada in Vancouver Island. And I was one of the first graduates in 2004. And I was like, I'm onto this. I set up the first quantum holistic medical interfacing complementary alternative medicine when I was in Saskatoon. And since then, I've come on the road and now prefer to be kind of off grid, which is I'm actually moving, as I was telling you, to a little boreal forest place, away from any 5G towers and no cell phone service, because I know that tech of it. But the nice thing about doing biofeedback that Ryan did at Insight Health Apps is he, after all these years and many machines and many technologies, and we've actually got a Rife app that people can put on their phone or iPad, or we've got basically a Quanta Cap, which I'll talk about, and that is amazing. So the clients pre-send their face and their picture, just like you talked about what Sanctuary did. I had those books way back when, and EMC squared and all that. And I was working very much like that. The only difference is we would work with clients in-house, and I would work basically subspace or remote, or as you call distance energy healing. And then at that point, people would send in their hair to us or nail clippings or whatever, thinking this was the precursor to, a regen bed, right? That's the buzzword, right? In the last 10 years, oh, we got regen beds. Well, yeah, they do, but they won't give it to the public. So we have to improvise in the interim and use different things that are safe, because they are not safe for everyone. And this is the misnomer when I start seeing a lot of people, well, we want to give this supplement and that horse paste thing and this blue thing in your brain. And those things are not safe for everyone. And, people are using terahertz wands, right? That have put people into congestive heart failure. I've seen a client just about die within 24 hours of using some of these things too. And the problem becomes is people don't have the background. They're not educated. They were not, and I was multiply certified. I have 30 some certifications behind me besides the nursing stuff. But what happens, and then we also have a University of Integrative Medicine, IQUM, out of the University of Hawaii, which I'm part of. So we do put out quantum doctors. Oh, surprise, surprise, and quantum nurses and PhDs and, masters and stuff too in this kind of technology. But what happened, people aren't asking the right questions. And unfortunately, with a lot of people that got extra graphene, whether it was through the swab or through the injection or through the sprays now, is that some of these different electrical devices can actually trigger people. And we don't want them also going into exacerbating whatever condition or underlying condition they may have, which in my opinion has been always misdiagnosed because they don't have the gnosis, right? So if you don't have the knowledge, you're going to miss knowledge or diagnose them. And that's what I always said. So I could play the words, you are dying to the knowledge, you're dying to the gnosis. And they like to play in medicalese, just like in the courts, and they're witchcraft and doctorcraft and lawyercraft. They also have, this type of thing, and it gets very deceptive. And so that's where I think the biofeedback cuts the BS for most people, because it's like stepping on a scale. It's your information. And so it really is, and it's used a lot through Russia. I was like amazed. Russian technology, those bear clans never piss off the bears, right? And so what happens is a lot of this was developed by 40 Russian scientists, and they were helping with the NASA 13 project. Like, Houston, we got a problem. Well, there was a lot of this technology was being used in there. So we call it radionics because it works more in the radio waves. Some people call it the ether. Some people call it pre-chana, life force energy, whatever you want to call it. It's working in the spiritual or in the quantum end. And what it is, it's no different than trying to explain to people, how are we using TVs? How are we using Zoom? How are we using a phone? Because it works on a carrier wave. And this doesn't work any different. So to do what I would consider to be radiology or imaging instead of diagnostic, you can get a full complementary thing. I can do more than the hospital can do in minutes, what they would do in lab. And of course you have to wait, and there's time, then you have to get the interpretation, if it's even correct. And now what's even worse now is in the States with your healthcare 4.0, a friend of mine, Sabrina Wallace, right, that talks a lot about the wide body area network and how they've been intermeshing all the graphene so they could, again, do it from a nefarious point of view, that they would be tapping and reading, everything, your blood sugars, your heart rate, your respiration, and that now becomes an invasion of privacy, as far
Okay.
as I'm concerned. You know,
Well,
that's manipulation,
yeah.
you
I
know.
actually do have on my phone the Genesis, no, Genius,
Genius. Yeah,
Genius Insight.
yeah,
And I've done it a couple of times where I will repeat the words. It'll record my voice, and it's able to take that information and then extrapolate from it to the issues that my physical body. And it's not just the physical body that we're talking about here either. And I want to talk
correct.
about that. But before we continue, I want to let you who are listening and watching know that we are talking with Karen Ann McDonald. We're talking about a website I'm going to send you to, and it happens to be. I had it right in front of me, ladies and gentlemen. Karen Ann, if I can't find it quickly, tell me what is the website address that you want to send people to?
I am gonna send it right in the chat room to it, so
All
you
right,
have a copy right in front of you.
Inside
It's
Health
inside
Apps.
Health Apps, and then
Yes.
you can go forward slash, and then you can even put Kieran Ann McDonald too. Or if you want to get a hold of me, you can get a hold of me at clanmother13@gmail.com with a K. So
Oh, I like that.
KLAM.
I
Yeah,
like that. Clan
yeah.
Mother 13. And we'll
So
talk
you
about clans as well as
yeah,
we
the genetics.
continue here on Tell Me Your Story. We are talking with we are talking with Clan Mother 13. We're talking with Karen Ann, and we want to send you again to that website having to do with finding out more about what we're going to be talking about. A couple of things real quickly. Number one is that I've been in broadcasting since 1979. I've been listening to the radio a heck of a lot longer than that. I still
Oh,
remember the very first little transistor radio that I got, and I would put it under my pillow at night to listen to the station that I really enjoyed at that time.
hmm,
And I also learned about AM and FM radio waves. I learned about microwaves and all of the other
right.
kinds of waves that man has created over the years, but
Hmm.
also the various waves that we are bombarded by from the universe that come
For
in.
sure.
And then we have this atmosphere that tends to supposedly protect us from some of the more harmful rays. A rather interesting design. Be
Yeah,
curious to talk to the designer and say, well, what made you think of doing that and this and the other thing? And really, was the platypus really a mistake, or was that a design, intentional design, or a design flaw?
yeah,
But then there's this other aspect on the more esoteric level, and again, I understand where you and many others are coming from when it comes to, for example, in the states we have what are called HIPAA
yeah,
laws.
yeah,
And of course, I can talk about me all I want because I'm not violating them because it's me. But I've taken the perspective over the decades, especially
right.
growing up, born and raised Catholic, and working for a Christian radio station for 15 years.
Hmm.
They say that God, who and or whatever God is omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, knows all, sees all, hears all, etc., knows the past, knows the future, and so forth.
Hmm.
And this is the way I put it. Presently, we have a little over 8 and a third, maybe to a quarter billion people on the planet.
So they say.
God, using that term, knows everything about me, including my blood sugar levels, blood pressure, etc. What difference does it make if 8 and a quarter billion people know, and most of them do not care? They're too busy just living their lives and in some instances just surviving. So that's just my perspective. Okay. So I want to respect people's individual rights to privacy. So I won't
Mm.
go much further, but that's just sort of my own personal perspective that if you're that hard up that you have to dig into my medical records to find something, you need to get another life. Because I've often said this, that if my life were one of those reality shows, I wouldn't watch it. Not that my life isn't interesting to me, but it's not something that I would care to watch uh, on the telly. Another element you talked about where we're being inundated as well.
Hmm.
I remember seeing a video regarding cell phones,
Correct.
and in the fine print, it says to keep the phone a certain distance away from your head.
Always off the
Okay?
body. Yeah.
All right. And yet, who reads the, and how do you usually use your phone? Up against your head, up against your ear. Unless, of
With
course, I tend to use speakerphone most of the time. How is it that we protect ourselves in terms of the waves that we can't control from the universe, the waves that we can't control that man has created, both for telecommunications and just daily living, but also for malicious or malevolent purposes, because that is the case that people are doing this. We get the news stories about this one building, government building, and all the people now have headaches. We don't know what happened, and so on and so forth. And then you mentioned,
Oh,
of course,
we know what happened.
well, no, I'm saying most of us don't. Most of us do not. We hear the stories, but we're not really sure exactly where it's coming from, who's doing it,
Right.
and it doesn't really matter where or who it's happening.
That's
So
correct.
help us to understand how we utilize the technologies that we're talking about here today,
Safely.
okay, to return our bodies to, I love what my friend Linda Mackey used to use the term homeostasis or
Hmm.
balance.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great word. And I've always used it. We can say it's in a state of peace,
Hmm.
right? We could use 0 point. We all have different things, but homeostasis is a medical term, right? And actually, it kind of means static. I've never really liked it because it's kind of like an oxymoron when you get into it. But
Hmm.
if you get into a state of peace, or what we call 0 point, is that you're going into a state of balance. And that's really where we need to be. And that's why the Genius was designed to work with a trinary computer system. So we're in quantum computers, and we have been for 20, 30 years. So we use what's in Star Trek, they call it a trivector. So these are not throwing off more EMF or dirty electricity. And you're right. I mean, with 6G, 7G, and 8G, which is now running fully deployed, there's nowhere to hide. And I mean, part of the thing is they don't need towers anymore, right? And whether you look at what happened in the discombobulation,
Hmm.
affecting people, LRAD and direct energy weapons, they don't need towers. And this is stuff coming from the satellite. So whether you want to call it through the ethers, whatever, we call it the wide body area network, or in the medical terms, what they're trying to do, it's called a M band, which is a medical body area network, which is now basically rigging you up, whether you like it or not, didn't sign up for it or not. They're indirectly, these people in these private military complexes and companies have put you onto the internet of body of nano things. And they've done it to the animals. It's called the Internet of Animals. We had a whole bunch of ostriches here. They did it too. And they just want to do the digital convergence and digital AI and assimilation. And that's where it's going. So we have this technology. Thank gosh that Ryan has been on board. I've been doing this for about 25 out of my 40 some year medical career as well. And the reason why is because it's your information that stays with you. It does not have to go up to the cloud, or someone can hack it, or interpret it, or do whatever they want, because there are things that are being done. Ask anyone
Hmm.
that's a targeted individual.
Hmm.
This Havana Cuba syndrome, call it whatever you want, is very, very real. And there's a bunch of nasty little gangs out there that are stalking people through cybersecurity. And they have done it, and they're hacking it, and it's going on. I mean, I've dealt with lots of clients this has happened with, and they're burning, they're having the tinnitus. I mean, there are all sorts of things that you can be experiencing. And so what happens when you go into using biofeedback, we can use the voice, which is actually your vowels correlate to those sacred geometry and sacred vowels, which correlates exactly. Remember, I don't know if you've ever heard of Greg Braden, but Greg Braden will
Oh,
talk.
yes.
Okay, so Greg's amazing. He does his whole thing about how we can use sound or chanting, and they actually dismantled tumors within 3 minutes while they were watching an ultrasound in China. And part of what, when he's talking about is that the actual sounds are actually in the DNA code. So there's a frequency and a sound directly to the DNA itself. And that means through sacred geometry, or people that have looked at Dr. Emoto's work, right? Where, hidden messages in water, hidden messages in urine now, hidden messages in live blood we're finding. I just interviewed actually and spoke with Fiona Gardner yesterday. So, when you're starting to see the sacred geometry, everything can be put together or dismantled or recreated through sound. And as we say, whether it's the sound, the logos, that is the building block of everything. And that your voice then acts as a living harmonic. It interfaces. And all the computer does, or the app actually, and we got away from using, class 2 medical devices in the States through the FDA and Health Canada up here, right? Because they wanted to shut them down. The original Rife machines, when we started doing them, we couldn't get them out. So we started calling them sound mixers. And now, because we've gone into apps, because Ryan was a genius, like we've taken Rife stuff and radionics way to another level. Right now, I can have a speaker here, in essence. It's like a sound wave. It's like listening to the creator's ear, right?
Yeah.
And so we can put that substance on. I can go right now, make a substance from my garden, which I have. I make lots of tinctures and forage. I could put it on here. I could put on, let's say everyone's all excited about tobacco leaf again, right? Oh, this is going to be great. Whatever. You can put the tincture on here. It will pick up the sound. Or I could put a tick on here, for example, which has been weaponized with a whole bunch of nasty stuff in it, and put that on and invert it. So now you're getting what's called an antidote, or I like to note, I said it's an antidote. An antidote is your day of atonement or attunement, right? We're being atoned in. And so that's that toning thing that we see now through Tartarian. You're saying, well, why did the churches have bells? Because they were doing frequencies. Why did they lift the stones for the pyramids? Because it was frequency. How do we change water? Like Dr. Emoto said, just by blessing it with our hands. Again, it's a sound tone. And so the nice thing about this device, compared to the old rice where you would hold like 2 rods, like 2 copper rods, and you'd run basically a mini little current, like a TENS machine through you. The difference with the sound is because it's more available to everyone, and it's designed to work with headphones, and you can get no EMF, just like my cell phone and stuff like that. My cell phone has got no EMF and low radiation and neutralizers and harmonizers. So again, these kind of things that's why they call them smart technology. It's surveillance. It's surveillance, militarized, armed residential technology. This is the most dangerous weapon in your house right now. And that is how people are getting ill, because you can run things through there. So you should never have it in and have these things in Faraday cages and smart meter shields. This I love because I can just screenshot it, and I can use it with my baby solar panel and go out camping, right? I've gone out camping and people have gotten ill or been somewhere because it's my pocket doctor. And I have seen so many miracles, and the miracle starts with us first, right?
Yeah.
So let me tell you my story, okay?
Well, I'll have you do that in just a moment.
Sure.
We're going to take a little pause here to remind folks we're talking with and listening to, and we're going to hear the story. We're going to have her tell us her story, Karen Ann McDonald. And we want to send you again to that website, which I think that you are really going to want to check out. And it is going to be something that is going to open your eyes to the some of the realities. And folks, if you're skeptical, I get it. I understand it. But here's the deal. Explain to us, how is it that in the 21st century, where we have some of the supposedly best health care in the world, and yet we have more and more and more people who are coming down with all kinds of different, not only diseases, but I'll label one in particular, and it has a lot of different levels, cancers. Unbelievable the number of people who have come down with different forms of cancer. We hear it on the news almost every day that this celebrity and this sports person and this person and that person. Yes, I'm stepping away because I have to deal with my cancer diagnosis, and on and on and on. Something is not right in the hood, so to speak. I was trying to think of another word there, but this is something that could help you, and it can't hurt in that regard. And by the way, I've had Greg Braden, I've had Jonathan Goldman on the program, Lynn McTaggart, Bruce Lipton, and many other folks in the early days of our program, as well as many others. And of course, now you and many other folks who are wanting to help us to become healthier and have a quality of life. I want to live to be 100, but not if I'm having problems of a health nature. I want to live a quality of life to 100 and then some. I mean, my goodness, I have that longevity in the family. My father lived to be almost 92. My mother will be 91 this year, and so forth. And yet I have an older sister, my elder sister, who passed away from breast cancer. My other sister, she's got her own conditions that she's dealing with now. I don't know about my brother. I will say this much. I was diagnosed many years ago with this thyroid condition they call Hashimoto's disease.
Mhm.
Well, the
Yeah.
last time my blood work was done, they never mentioned it at all. And whether they didn't test for it or whether it just didn't show up, I don't know. But obviously, my wife and I were doing something right because we are starting to feel even better. I've always felt good, but she's feeling better. We're feeling better together. And we hope that you folks will stay with us because we're going to hear Karen Ann McDonald's story as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. Reverend Dr. D here. And it's what's fascinating to me, Karen Ann, is that my wife and I, being Reiki masters, learning in our training session that we
Yeah.
can send this not only healing, but free energy through us. We're not using our own energy. That was one of the things that we were made clear on. You're
Mhm.
not using your own personal energy. As a matter of fact, you might even feel energized
But you are.
when you are sending the this energy. And we did this for my father's brother, and
Right.
following his funeral, my father's brother's funeral, my mother told us what had happened following our sending him an absentee healing.
Mhm.
And of course, then, of course, I'm thinking, well, yeah, but we're at his funeral. How was that healing? And it was then that I began to understand over the course of the next several decades
Change
that
it.
it's not about our intent is irrelevant. We're just sending it for them to use. It's like, here's a hammer. Whatever you want to use it for, go for it. And he did. And he got angry, threw his medications across the wall, across the room against the wall, got in his wheelchair and wheeled across the compound, the ranch that they lived on, to his son's house, where he went in, and I guess they had their time of closure and so forth.
Mhm.
And then he passed. Well,
Right.
for him, he didn't, for example, he didn't lose his battle. You can't lose your battle with whatever dis-ease that you're dealing with because either A, you're going to put it into remission and get rid of it through whatever modality. And so you've won short term because my father said, eat, drink, and be merry in moderation because nobody gets out of this world alive. Or, as I learned with my wife's nephew who passed from leukemia, or you win the other way by being freed from the body that has this dis-ease. So there is no lose situation. It's either win short term because again, we are mortal physically,
Mhm.
or you win because you get freed from the body that is diseased. Tell us about from the beginning how this. Now you've already mentioned your connection with the medical field.
Mhm.
How did you get involved in all of this? Because granted, there are going to be those who say, oh my God, she's a conspiracy theorist. She believes all that stuff about the viruses and the vaccines and the nanotechnology and on and on. And yet I've seen 60 Minutes pieces on nanotechnology. So who's to say that this isn't happening? You can't, it's kind of like, it's a challenge to prove it, but you can't really disprove it because you then look at all of the health problems that we've got in this country, let alone around the world. Share with us your story in that regard.
I always laugh. People throw up. Something came to mind was when you said about conspiracy. Well, who designed that? That was the CIA that came up with that coined word, right? Because they
Mm.
wanted to keep people away from what happened from the assassination with JFK, right? Just like, they'll say a quack. Well, what's a quack? A quack was the original shaman, like a medicine man or woman that
Mm.
ran around. And because they had the duck speak, they used to put all the aromatics like, clove and rosemary and thyme and peppermint and whatever else you used, right? But that looked like a duck's beak. And so they called them a quack. So a quack is actually, a total positive thing, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with conspiracy. If I take the word apart, conspiracy, con is against and against the pirates. Well, I'm not for piracy. So, take the word however you want, right?
Yeah.
But in here, that was one of the things I learned very quickly. And when you mentioned about what is nano, well, I can read a patent. I can read the patent for the wide area body network. I'll give you one. It's 802.15.4 or rate 5 and 6. So I can give you the patent to the IEEE
Mm-hmm.
for the standard. So some of this stuff is actually innate knowledge to me, you know, and like I said, people like Sabrina Wallace, Tony Pantalleresco, they are actually out there. And that's why I started my show even on YouTube with a few little strikes on it. So I've got a Rumble and Facebook
Join the
and
club.
everything
Join
else,
the
right?
club. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and I started doing, actually, I had radio. I was with people that left the BBC. I had Dark City Radio. And back 10, 15 years ago, I was also on what was called Project Ascension, which was kind of like the Project Camelot. But we were, you know, revealing things that were out there. And the bottom line, even with this thing that's in the injections, right? That's a cyber interface. It was never signed as a VAXX or VACC. It was put out as a cyber genetic technology with a patent. And I happen to be able to read whether it's a label on my apple that says number 9 organic and not a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in the store.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have that, you know, I think innate intelligence and wisdom, and hopefully I can apply that with this knowledge. And that's what I think separates some of us, is some of us actually do that extra due diligence. So in there, when I was in the hospital and I actually hurt my back,
Mm-hmm.
right? I made a mistake. I went to work with adults. I work in postpartum and normal nursery, and those adults did it to me after a few years. But literally, I injured my back. I ended up with a herniated disc, and all they could offer me was drugs, surgery, and something else. I thought, this is ridiculous. And so I went to go do their return to work program. I ended up with 2 herniated discs. So I was like twice as disabled
Oh,
by the
geez.
time I was done. And I thought, I should have known better. I just should have known better. And there was this great Jamaican nurse. She was huge. Rose John comes up to me and she says, let's try some oils. And I went, right. And so anyway, and also for trauma, I'd also come out of a bad relations. And that's another story with the children that I'm in about child protection. I found out very much about the trafficking and what was going on back then.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been at this, everything came at one time. It was child courts, myself, everything. So I replaced all the pharmaceuticals, and I had the pleasure, and Dr. Gary Young was one of the most pivotal changing moments in my life, is that every oil, and I know all those books back there inside here, I became an aromatherapist immediately. It was the highest form of basically plant medicine. So there's essences, there's foraging, there's herbology, there's homeopathics, which I trained in all of those. But there's nothing better than having an essential oil, which has got maybe 200 scriptural references most people have never read. Or going back to Genesis 1:29, you know, the fruit shall be your medicine. And that's where you can get into raw foods and all, you know, people having livets instead of diets. You know, so when I worked with people like Dr. Gabriel Cousins and learning the raw food thing and David Wolf, a lot of these people were seeing bishops. Same thing with Greg Braden. Everyone comes back at it. Is getting back to natural law or tribal. How did we eat tribally? And the biofeedback was presented to me, and I just fell over. You know, one, I'd used the oils. I'd seen my back correct. I started getting to live blood cell. I could see things almost like time traveling, issues that hadn't even manifested yet that were being carried, not necessarily genetic. And then you get into the whole emotional and mental profiling of it. Well, if you believe in that, when I got into matrix energetics with Dr. Richard Bartlett, another pivotal moment, right? Way beyond Reiki. Reiki still comes from a school of these are symbols and stuff like that. And I don't want to get into symbiology and the sigil part of it, but they're not all correct. And a lot of them are inverted. Yes, we all have energy, but we're also at a frequency. And right now, what's happened the last 6 years is a massive intelligence, not only operation, but intelligence test. And to see how we're applying the wisdom. And not to go for the pharmaceuticals and not to buy in, even if they're over the counter, because you can actually do things naturally and much better. When, as weird as it is, I can actually turn this up and give you the sound of frankincense, the sound of oregano, the sound of peppermint, the sound of actually that tapeworm, and invert it. And we do use this in the hospital. You know what they call it? Ultrasound.
Yeah.
So this is precision ultrasound, because we already use it in the hospital. So when people think, oh, this is out there, we'll go study Royal Raymond Rife and what they were doing here or in Europe, right? And hammerherd medicine. And what we were doing is that you could take that ultrasound and get rid of a kidney stone. And now they're using this kind of technology, not only in med beds worldwide, that they're starting to use, called hyptrophy, which is where they're using in a cancer now. They're using a sound wave. And it's much more effective than what they're finding their chemo and all that. But so is probably $3 of baking soda, and we could get rid of all the oncology departments. Like I said, people need to do their due diligence. But when I started looking at putting our voice in and using it like a soundboard, similar to kinesiology or muscle testing, every substance could be in there. So we have spent, for example, over 20 some years putting substances from every company, supplier. I even put the injection, I'll just say, cyber technology vials on here to see what I could extrapolate, to see what we could do. Or, for example, I could put a tick on here that's carrying a whole bunch of different, infections, like what they call Lyme or similar to Morgellon, and see if we could extrapolate out. Or, if you got a chemtrail with serratia, do the reverse code. Mm-hmm. So there are entire books where people can look at, even on Amazon, if they question this. Yeah. And it's called The Frequency of Rifing. And so all these codes for all these misdiagnosed diseases are in here, and we have already put them in to the database in the Genius. And anything that's not in all my books, for example, let's say I will add to it. So Ryan created Wiggle Room, and he called it a library. So we could all be librarians. So anything that I would find or create or make would be great on here. So when we think of just tuning forks, people have heard of, 528, 432, or 128, these weighted ones going on there. They have a certain frequency. But maybe you need that for the tapeworm that's at 33,000.23333. And what we found is that these bugs started getting in as people kind of parasites, but, whatever. And people can argue all the words about, what virus means, but, it means it means poison. We are poisoned. We are a poisoned planet. We are a poisoned people. We're seeing what's, happening everywhere here, so it's not rocket science, but to use this kind of technology. And I like to use it like a mood ring. So I could take a picture of someone, and what you call curling photography, like ultrasound, it's like thermal imaging. We're just running things through the camera lens, and we can see things through there. And I'm like, wow, you can see it's like a mood ring. So you can see if someone's really low energy, right? And it's not woo-woo. When people talked about chakras, I was like, what? But it meant wheels of light. And now I know, it's the infrared spectrum. Oh, guess what? It's between 100 to 200 hertz. Oh, we got that. Or what's an essential oil like peppermint at 76 megahertz, right? So one drop of peppermint would be 26 cups of peppermint tea. So right now, I am giving you the sound or the frequency. To me, it's like the creator. When the creator created this planet, it was through breath and sound. And that's how we communicate to people. I mean, there's all sorts of other ways of communication. But to me, the sound is one of the most important. That's why when people come together in erosional tribes, they used to put their foreheads together and they would breathe together because they would be inspired together. And to me, this is inspirational because you're putting your voice in and you are healing yourself through affirmation work in whatever language you want to do it, in your mother's tongue or whatever. But it has the ability to create the frequency or the sound. And those harmonics, wherever you're weak, it can put an inverted sound. So, for example, if I had when you just mentioned Hashimoto's, right? I don't look at Hashimoto's like you have a problem with your thyroid. I look at it as there's acupuncture points. And this device that Ryan was so, inspired by the creator to develop for us at the right time to bring it forward to people is that we could scan you for, let's say, a chiropractor. We can actually look at your spine and see if it's pinched off or it's inflamed. Well, there goes another one. And then I could look at all your hormones and neurotransmitters, but where are they all made? In the gut. So everything basically usually comes down to a digestive disorder, whether it's small intestine or large intestine or a combination. We are basically, when we're in the womb, come down to the neural arc reflex, and everything comes through this tube. And that tube is the inner reflexology of our iridology here. So that device that I use can be like muscle testing, and you can tell me what shape your spine is in, where it's inflamed, what the herbs are you need, the oils that you need, and more importantly is it has traditional Chinese medicine. So I developed a traditional Chinese medicine and an Ayurvedic department and Pachakarma and things like that, because we can look at someone and scan you right now for acupuncture points or reflexology points. And I think that's amazing.
Well,
So, your audience right now just quietly is hearing this. They're still picking it up subconsciously in the background.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
very cool. Very cool. A couple things. One, we are talking with Karen Ann McDonald, and we encourage you to go to the website that she has given to us here on the program to find out more about the work that she, and again, this gentleman's name is Ryan. What's his
Williams.
Ryan Williams, and we want you to find out more about what is going on in that regard. Another element that I want to mention too is back in 1998,
Hmm.
it might have been 99. My present wife and I, we were living in Phoenix. We attended a Wayne Dyer lecture.
Yeah.
And at that lecture, he introduced a gentleman by the name of Stephen Lewis, who, you know who he is. I know his book is Sanctuary.
Right.
And as he was talking about this process, I
Right.
remembered something that happened back in the, I'm going to say the mid 80s when I was working for that Christian station,
Hmm.
worked out at the transmitter site. And the engineer was there installing turntables. And he hooked up a turntable and he said, put a record on there. Let's make sure we have it hooked up and everything. So we have the audio as it's coming through and so forth. I put the record on, I put the needle on, I hit it on play, had it in cue. And what I heard was a song that we'd played dozens of times, only this time the vocals, the lead vocals were way, way, way in the background. And he knew exactly what the problem was. He says, "Oh, hang on a second, I've got one of the channels out of phase." So he went underneath and he rewired and da da da. And I played it again. Ah, now we've got Sandy Patty singing in the foreground, or Amy Grant, whoever it was.
Hmm.
So I'm sitting there with my then girlfriend, now wife, and as he's sharing, as Stephen Lewis is sharing his process,
Right.
I took one of my business cards, and on the back of it, I started drawing a diagram of the a stereo, a true stereo left right separation wave,
Got it.
because I had done this to create what are known as karaoke, if you will, or sing
Yep.
along audio files. And I began to understand that if you had a true separated stereo left right and you take one of them and you take them out of phase and then mix them together, it pushes that vocal all the way in the back. Does not eliminate it, but those that are very similar either disappear or get pushed to the back. And
Hmm.
those that are dissimilar get brought to the front. And if you have a left right stereo signal, but the audio file is exactly the same on the left and the right channels, and you take
Hmm.
one of the channels out of phase and you mix them together in a monaural signal,
That's where I was
the
coming to.
wave disappears. It's gone.
That's right.
It's gone because all of the frequencies are identical in the left and the right channels. And it got me to thinking, well, isn't that kind of number one what Rife was doing and what he is doing? Basically saying, I'm going to scan your photograph. This is what Stephen did.
Yeah.
And I'm going to scan it and I'm going to find those frequencies that are out of balance. And then I'm going to send the balancing frequency
Hmm.
to you and
Right.
get you back to, I will use the word homeostasis or balance. And in a matter of speaking, that is kind of what we're talking about here in terms of this
Absolutely.
new technology, this app. Now, you've done a scan on me, but
Hmm.
I now have the app on my phone. And I have actually done it twice. I've actually run two of them. And am I correct that as you listen to the I'll refer to it as music because that's kind of what it sounds like. By the way, there are two different sound creations that I was able to choose from. One of them is like, wow, that's like I'm listening to popcorn popping and it's really like hip hop music kind of thing,
Isochronic. Yeah.
right? And then
Yeah.
the other one is nice and gentle and like bells and chimes and oh, it's just wonderful, which I prefer.
Mhm.
But how long do I need to be listening to these frequencies that are created from my voice and the things that I say
Right.
before I can experience a shift to where I would then run my voice through the process again to get a new set of frequencies, and that would
Mhm.
also show me maybe improvements in certain areas?
The question is like, okay, going back, how long will I notice a
Yeah, we
difference?
don't want to
Okay.
talk quick fix because I don't think that's what it is. But
Well,
what? Go
let's
ahead.
just say when I ran that on you within 3 minutes, could you feel it?
There was a bit of a difference, yes. I mean, I've always
Absolutely.
been energetic, but it's like I want to go out. I wish there was snow out there I could shovel because I want to go out there and do this and that and the other.
Right. So, but the thing is that that was an immediate shift. So I'll give you an example. That's what got me into this is when I broke my ankle in three different spots.
Hmm.
When I first got into Ryan's one, I put it on and I could actually feel it in each one of the fractures. I knew exactly where the free fractures was, but apparently so did that device.
Mm.
Okay. When I broke my other foot last year, at least they were 15 years apart. But anyway, I went and broke the other one. And normally it takes you about 4 to 5 weeks to start getting weight bearing. I was weight bearing and off my crutches in 4 to 5 days. So it can speed up the healing. So it can work on a physical, mental, emotional thing. So ideally what you want to do is, hook up for about half an hour a day if you can. A lot of times, let's say with this, because, and you brought up a great point, there are things that are out there, sounds called isochronic tones, and then there's what you call binaural beats.
Hmm.
And these are designed that you should actually, with the binaural beats, is to listen to them with headphones or earbuds. Because what happens is that you mentioned something very, very important is that the brain, left and right brain processes differently. And this is where you get into the Tesla 369. You need to be able to integrate and have a crossover. And this is where we've been using this with the Genius Biofeedback. One of the other things we brought in is a light technology as well, called
Hmm.
an improviser. So we take sound and light, and also we've got some bracelets now that also put like infrared and magnetics through. And what you're doing when we find we can get that brain into a calm state of 40 hertz,
Hmm.
all of a sudden people didn't have Alzheimer's and dementia. Or how long does it take to get rid of these, let's say a tapeworm? So we know that we could use about 35 minutes a day for about 3 weeks and we could get rid of a tapeworm. So you could
Hmm.
just isolate the tapeworm or isolate what was causing the problem. Now, the difference is, like I said, there is a difference between left and right ears.
Hmm.
So some people will use headphones, earbuds, or what's called bone oscillation conduction
Hmm.
earphones. So that's another thing people have been using in here. But this is where people need to explore this. I mean, this is not woo woo. I'm talking to
Right.
you in hertz and megahertz and
Right.
different things along like that.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people are hearing these things on YouTube, but they are not going to be able to get rid of your tapeworms and just listening to 528 or just listening to my one tuning fork. It's not just nice as it is out here. It's not going to create the same thing.
Right.
And so we do have many generators. So this is not just one device that Ryan's made. He's got one for sound, one for harmonics. And that's one thing when you talked about how do we connect to people, it's through quantum entanglement.
Mm.
And that's why we can put this in a capsule and send it to you and you can listen to it for a week. So a lot of people really like this option. I mean, a lot of times I'll do with most of my clients, and I have a show called Frequency Fridays on YouTube and on Rumble. So a lot of people come there to get some education as well. We have other things that can educate people in PDFs. And I think that was the brilliance of Ryan. And it's also his generosity. I mean, when I had to buy my first biofeedback Askio, that was a $50,000 investment for my
Oh,
medical
my
centers.
goodness.
Oh yeah. And so
Wow.
Ryan's now taken that 30,000, and don't think we haven't stripped everything out of those machines, because we did. Right. There isn't anything that $15,000-$20,000 machines that are still out there being sold that we cannot replicate. And then now I see what people have done. They've tried to knock off his kind of technology, but they can't because it's proprietary. And so this was the same stuff that you see, like the voice was done through fast Fourier technique, which
Mhm.
was developed at MIT in Boston, at
Yeah.
Massachusetts Institute of Technology.
Yeah.
This is
But-
what we're doing, but he took it to another level than Sherry Edwards did or anyone else has done. And now
Yeah.
people are trying to copy it, but they don't have the same thing that we have when you see these other AO and scanners and wearables, which we don't want to go into
Yeah.
because of the stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Whole
Yeah.
bunch of other questions that are coming to mind, but we're going to get to those in just a moment. Just a reminder, you are listening to, yes, you are. Tell me your story. Yes, indeed. We work our way through those challenges and just forge ahead, moving into other areas. God, so many questions come to mind, and the universe is just inundating me with all of these things. And of course, what I've learned is you ask the ones that jump out at you more than anything else. First of all, if I was to record that audio, because I can set it for anywhere from a couple of minutes to up to 30 minutes. And I was to record it and loop it and have it just playing in the background, say in the house. Now, granted, that one's designed for me. You talked about using earbuds or headphones. Would it be effective at all, or it would be minimally effective because it's out in the air as opposed to punching into my brain through my ear canal?
Put it this way, this is my prayer to my children. I have 3 devices minimum, one for me, one for the 2 of them, and one for my clients. No, it's effective that you can do it, through the air, which is what your audience is hearing and we're hearing now. So it is effective. It gets more concentrated, as you know about biofields. Okay. So as you think about, and most people think chakras go this way, but there's a biofield through the torso that keeps coming out. So we have 100 hertz, 200 hertz, and we keep going out. And that's how we're all interrelated. So they can work on different levels. So I always suggest if you can do the headphones, you're in a much better space.
Sure.
And the other thing that most people don't know is that you can actually put your headphones around a glass of water. So when you don't have all these, really exciting, like, Tesla and multi-wave and Lakosky coils and all sorts of things I have back here, is that you can actually simply just kind of think of it like prayer. You know how you'd put your hands around a glass of water or bless your food? Well, now put the sounds around the glass of water for 20 minutes and it will totally taste different to you.
Oh, wow.
And so one of the things is there is an auto loop built in there. And you just heard that gong, which means, oh my gosh, you're doing so much better. You're having like readjusted to this session. Is that we take your voice, and I can do it from 1 minute to 30 minutes, but there's a little secret. If you put it to 0, it will auto loop. So a lot of my clients will do it right before bed for about half an hour before bed. And then they go hook up to it manually. And then they let it just play quietly in the room, creating a different scalar field, a positive energy field. And so then they can hook up, kind of like, think of it like a battery booster, because we're getting, discombobulated, not just by whatever government, but the other thing too is we're getting hit with so many different frequencies in so many different ways. And, I just had a call literally right before I got on the air with you, is that one of the guys down the valley, he says, just watching all the stuff that's going on in the wars, he says, my physical body I've got this lump in my back. And he says, I really think it's connected. I said, and somatically, probably there is something, but I'm going to look at the acupuncture and I'm going to use the genus. And I did. And we found which acupuncture it was. But it's not just us, it's the water. I've been using this like a homeopathic to make the water from the spring water and put it back into the water to clean the waters, because it will act as a transducer. That's why we do things like that. It's kind of like, making kombucha or, sour bread, you need a starter, right? This is the starter.
Yeah.
And it always takes us back to that place of balance. And organs are just like, basically musical instruments in the orchestra. We're just tuning you in. It's a pitch. The only difference is I have the right pitch. And you can do this anywhere in the world now that we've gone, into doing this. And I've been doing telemedicine, by the way, since Facebook came out, 2017. That's how long I've been doing distance medicine and doing telemedicine. So it's not new to me, in here. And most of my clients are on FaceTime or Telegram or on Google Hangouts, because wherever I got a camera, or, Skype went to Teams. And now I'm on Teams. And then, of course, the big one is what we're on, like on Zoom or StreamYard or whatever. So I do shows all over the place, bringing in this technology, because I use the water as the universal solvent. And to me, essential oils, which are very close to our blood because they go inside out, they cross the blood-brain barrier, certain ones like frankincense and cedarwood, but the water can be put on and it can be used in the bathtub. It could be used for teas. It could be used for drinking. I actually did some for some farm cats, and you know what they did in 2 days? They
Mm.
vomited up 5-inch tapeworms. And I've done shows like this where they were listening to the music in the background,
Mm-hmm.
and they said their animals came up and started detoxing. And right now I'm working on a dog that just seizured, that they figured happened to do something with the 5G towers recently.
Mm.
And we had blue flashes, and so their houses are shaking here. So, we know there's things on fault lines and other things. And so the animals are being affected. And also we've been putting it around the trees because look what's happening to our gardens and stuff. This is really one of the things. So I've been really working on the water. And of course, I'm also colon hydrotherapist. So I always laugh. I said, I decolonize people and get rid of your crap, right? Because it's emotion, right? It's not, whatever.
Yeah.
But the other thing is peri-steam hydrotherapy, which most men and women have never heard of. And peri-steam hydrotherapy is literally where you sit on it. It's a subconscious, but you're actually putting steamed herbs, oils, and minerals, like mineral rich
Mm-hmm.
electrolytes, and you sit on it and it goes through different tissues.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, it's not only smudging, but it's like an inner sweat lodge, right? Or going into the, teepee kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like the traveling tabernacle, like way back in the scriptures. How did they heal? Why did they have the shofar? Why did they have all the oils? Why did they have this kind of biofeedback? Why did they tell you, in the quorum and stuff like that, to go in and use basically enemas? That's what they were doing. This is not new technology. It's really, I think, restoring it back because people have come away from what we've been doing. We've been using biofeedback. And what is biofeedback? It's my voice healing that I work with the creator. It's an inner prayer. So I can put it from affirmational work, because a lot of people have issues with abundance. They have, somatic, injury. So let's say it's like, okay, I want to deal on an emotional end. I have a whole thing in here for post-traumatic stress, for anxiety, ADD, all those things. And then recommended also herbs and oils that you can try that might be, in there, because there's so many things people are dealing with emotionally now. And unless we deal with the emotional part of it and the somatic part, we know, different forms of medicine, that if you have liver issues, it's to do with maybe unresolved anger.
Mm-hmm.
Or what is the pancreas? Because life isn't sweet enough.
Yeah.
Right. And again, why does that happen? Why is things not sweet enough? Because again, there's the acidity or the battery aspect. We are basically walking water bags, electrical magnetic water bags. And, this is really what we have to deal with. And when you look at the electronic or electrical component to it, that what we have to do, and this is where the medical system has totally failed. And I know as a nurse, I know it sounds weird, but I've actually been in traumas and broken legs and all sorts of things and fixed them without an orthopedic or an emergency surgeon. However, most people don't have that equipment.
Right.
So it's not a bad thing to have some trauma surgeons. I'm all for that. But how we look after things acutely and chronically has totally failed the system. And we need to go back to what we were looking at. So, I mean, as weird as it is, when have you gone to a doctor? I don't know of any psychiatrists when I was training, and they're still doing electrical shock and weird things to this day that basically disconnect the mind, the body, and the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, they disconnect you from the creator, or as people think, God.
Yeah.
And that's what this is the most common thing I hear, is that people feel disconnected, in here. They feel like they just want to numb out. And I think when we can go into this and start bringing back that joy, that bliss, that excitement into people's lives, and there's no drugs, there's no surgery, it's economical. Like, what does it cost? And when Ryan came out with, well, why don't we give everyone a week or two to try it? Well, where did I ever go to get a car in here, use it for 2 weeks, right? It didn't. But I could look at the sensitivities. I could look at the allergies. Like, I mean, most of my clients these days, they're still doing coffee or something like that. Like, what are you causing? And as you know, you mentioned about the electronic diagram, right? Is we are volts, amp, and resistance. And, I've looked at Dr. Jerry Tennett's work, to Candace Pert's. It doesn't matter. Bob Becker's books. I mean, I had a library in my center that was literally with actually the whole room. It was literally like 6 or 8 full, just on stuff that people could have as a library, how you did energy, how we move things, right? But again, and this is the misnomer, is that people aren't realizing about the loosh harvesting, or if you touch someone with metals or get change from someone, you are actually can get, as they think, transmitted or shed on, or it's load bearing is what Sabrina would call it in a computer language. They're load bearing people to the point that their systems are crashing. So
Wow.
we all have a way of saying it, but
Yeah.
the only difference is I kind of listen to every kind of language, right? I'll be able to say vagina, because what's a vagina steam? I went, you don't know what a vaginal steam is? Like, you better look that up. That's the oldest form of medicine before the pyramids and the temples. I said they were all doing vaginal steaming. They call it yoni steaming. Oh, if I'm talking to someone in Asia, it's a chai yoke, like Tai Chi, it's a chai yoke, right? Russian, Bannock. We're going to do Bannock steaming, right?
Yeah.
Like vaginal steaming, right? I will be able to say, how to do this in 20 different languages, because we need to go back.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing, like, let's get back to the script. And if you say it's scriptural, well, here's our script. We don't need to be conscripted, and I don't need to have a prescription where someone wants to go ahead and alter your genetics. And this is the whole key. This is what the whole thing is about, is changing and taking out the genetic line, your mitochondrial DNA, and our connection to the creator and to the divine mothers and to this land, and the connection to everything that is all and always has been.
Well,
And
there's one, only have a few minutes left, and I really want to touch upon this one, and maybe we'll have to, well, there's no maybe about it. I would like to have you back to maybe pursue it even further. We promote on this program spending time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, going within, listening to that quiet, peaceful, in that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place, listening to and following the promptings of that still small voice. So my question has to do with what are the effects / ramifications to us and our immortal spirits or souls that animate this physical body that's being inundated and again changed and so on and so forth, as your technology that you are presenting here today is supposed to help us to restore back to balance or homeostasis. What are the spiritual effects?
There are so many spiritual effects. I think, like anything, whether people look at it as the 10 commandments or just, we should only need to, like, don't hurt anyone and deal with others as you want to be, like, don't put anything between you and the creator. The minute you kind of break those two first rules, whether you call them the maxims of laws or call it whatever you want, the commandments, once you break that, it affects everything. So whether it's in food and it's a codex alimentarius, or in this, for every action, there's a reaction. And it always starts in the spirit first. And then it comes down into the mental, emotional. So when we can start looking at it from a scientific point of view, people say, spiritual or whatever, or is it psychic, or, what part is it, psionics, or the synergy of it? We have a different way of saying it. And that violation is what actually comes down the pipes. And there's that connection as well that we see spiritually as well between a mother and her child. We see this in telegony. You see it in the microcosms and chimerics, fetal chimerism, right? We are connected to these people forever. And, it's not just what are we doing now, but how is it going to affect us, from moving on here? How is it going to affect, as I would say, a clan mother has always been the head of the genetics, or the head matriarch, right? It's nothing to do with the KKK, because the KKK, and I know you're down the States, down there in the southern part, but in some of those areas, is that the KKK meant to kill the clans. It was the assassins of the clans. They were not here for the clan. So the clans just means your original genetics is really what it was. So we were tribal, not familial, and we're not part of the gens or the Roman thing. So we're not Indians or indigenous or native. All of us that come off of a tribe, right? And you could test this through your bloodline. We all know the, 60 some blood types here, and mitochondrial DNAs, and genetic lines are huge. And what we're doing is it's almost like dishonoring the people that have come before and how we're going to affect our children. So that's why I like working with biofeedback, because if I ever saw a violation of some sort of a law, and I mean the creator's law, natural law, that's why I'm not into common law, or I'm not into the military or admiralty or any of that, because I know some of those original spiritual laws. And we have to do our utmost to keep ourselves in alignment and keep it in there. Like what's inside is outside and what's outside is in. So when we get into that, if you're not composting, if you're not whatever, there are ramifications to a lot of this.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the biofeedback, I don't want to go to companies where someone's doing something to me, or you take a picture of my house and you're going to be doing things like Leafy and stuff like that. That's not the way we do things. We need to be self-responsible. And that's why I like it in here, because there's a whole booklet of stuff. There's PDFs, there's teaching. It gives you the first 30, 40 herbs. It gives you the first 30, 40 essences, the top 30 thing. And anything you don't know, there's a little question inquiry spyglass, which means, hi, the answer is here. So I don't expect you to know what C1 or where it goes to, or C12, or what a rock rose does. But you know what? It's in there for you.
Yeah.
And at least it's a great way to learn your herbs and plant medicine and all sorts of things. And you can build it up and develop it as you want. No joke. There's a lot of medical doctors and naturopathic doctors using this in the background now. You're having consults with them. I've even seen psychics using them, right? But, it's more than just, and I don't read it as, hi, this is, curling photography in a mood ring. I know how to read holographically, right?
Right.
So I would read your energy scan or color scan, just like I would read iridology, which is all your reflexes off the peripheral and central and vagus nervous system. Yeah. So does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And I want to thank you for your kind invitation. It's great. I'm going to put this up on my Facebook and all my Twitters and everything else and social networks as well. And I'd love to have you too on my program on my Frequency Fridays on YouTube.
I would love that. I would absolutely love that. We'll set that up both as far as a return to this program by you, but also in terms of being a part of what you're doing and the work that you're doing. And I want to thank you for participating in the work that we're doing here at Tell Me Your Story. It's really been a wonderful experience, and I hope that folks will go to your website, which is insighthealthapps.com. We'll be linked to that website so people can find out more and get the app, put it on your phone, your tablet, what have you, and begin. And
if you want a quick demo, if they want a quick demo, I meet with people for 10, 15, 20 minutes if you want. If they want to have full sessions, I'm still a therapist. I can still do consultation and do therapy for you. But if they just want to see what it is or have a silly question, do reach out to me, because I'm seriously happy to help coach you through that. I'm one of the international trainers too and coaches. So,
and again, it's clan13@gmail.com.
Clan Mother 13.
Clan Mother 13. Okay.
I'm a mama. I'm a bear mama.
Okay.
I'm a white bear mama.
There you go. Clanmother13@gmail.com. I have 3 final questions that I want to ask you. I ask all of my guests, but before I do, I want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m. with our special edition of Tell Me Your Story with Lumari of Lumari.com, and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m. with Wednesdays being our conversation with Dennis Henson, as well as the conversation that we are having on Body of Health. That's the series that we are dealing with Dennis Henson. We hope that you'll tune in to all 9 of those programs. We're streaming live at all 9 times at richarddugan.com. We're podcasting on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and we're on YouTube and Rumble. So we hope that you will subscribe, and we hope that you will click notification so that when I put up a new conversation, you will be notified. We want you to get a copy of my book, which is Choices, 5 Steps for Life. It is available via Amazon in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle. And we also ask if you can leave us a tip. Any financial support is greatly appreciated. It helps us to defray some of the costs. And we thank you for those who have helped and those who will help. Our tip jar is PayPal. And if you go to richarddugan.com, there are links to Amazon for the book choices and to PayPal for the tip. And then, of course, we ask that you take some time during the decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to spend some time in that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listening to that still, small voice and following the promptings as well. With all of that being said, we now move to our final three questions, and we go to that first question, and that is to our special guest: Who is Karen Ann McDonald?
That's the Isha, Isha, we are who we are, or I am who I am question. Okay. Well, I'll just go with that. We are who we are. You know, I hope to be, you know, as a mother, I think that's my biggest calling in life,
Mm.
quite frankly. And as a clan mother, to be that individual, that woman that I can be there to help nurture, provide compassion and a safe place for people. As we were to be technically wisdom keepers, knowledge keepers, that type of thing. And
Mm.
not just for that, but for, the whole planet as we see it, right? And beyond the cosmos, but the plants, the water, everything that we
Mm.
have here. And we are love, we are excitement, we are co-creations, we're co-creators. And if I can give that, it's kind of like all the different levels. So
Mm.
that's who at least I feel I am.
Mm.
And I hope that, it translates for other people's. Thank you.
What gets you up in the morning?
Not a rooster. I'm not on the farm. What gets me up in the morning? Actually, you know what? It's a circadian rhythm that ties me in. And my first thought is usually of my children. I would say my children, but the creator gets me up every
Mm.
morning and keeps me here. Not done yet, apparently. Yeah, what gets me up? Everything's about creation. Yeah.
Mm.
But what's my inspiration? Definitely my children.
Mm.
Definitely in there. Yeah, myself.
And the final question is a movie oriented question. Mitch is on horseback with his buddies, and he asks them this question I ask you: What was your best day?
What was, not what is. I don't have something like I can't isolate it. I think
Okay.
every day has been my best day.
Okay.
It's been my most exciting days. Every day builds on the other day. And there's no time and no, like the whole thing about it's like we're timeless, right?
Mhm.
And it's one of the things too that I don't think in terms of time and hours and days, just the whole entire thing, my existence here.
Mhm.
So I don't have an answer specific that way, but my answer is that it's all been. Yeah,
Wonderful. Well, again,
everything. Yeah.
again,
So
thank you so much for being a part of what we're doing here. We really appreciate you, and we look forward to having you back again. And we thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal. Jeanette, I'm still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I will see you on the other side. Mike, thanks for being in my life and letting me be in yours. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.